And Faisal, there was no secret to the reason why I wanted to pick you. First of all, you're very visible. You do a lot, both through Integration Nation and then through, obviously, of course, your own coaching business. And just wanted to hit a few of the highlights. Your brand is Masculine Charisma. You're at masculine.co, where people can find you to do more information on you. You've recently launched the 5 fractures, which we'll probably get into throughout today's call, but just really help to identify where men need help. And then your specialty, though, is to transform men into high conscious masculine men. You're visible all over the Integration Nation timeline. And of course, you're the charismatic host a lot of times on our brotherhood calls. Did I miss anything as we were going through?
No, just keep going. Just keep going.
There's a lot of love. You're a very busy man.
Yeah, just
so we appreciate it. Yeah. And like I said, there's no secret behind it because you're so visible. I wanted people to get to know the full Faisal story and to hear, your whole journey, how you found out about being, that you were a nice guy, some of the things that may have, resonated with you through childhood, that once you figured out, the name of what was going on, how that affected you kind of learning through, the way it affected your family as you were, figuring all this out, and just really getting the whole story for me. I think that will help, people that are going through the same kind of information or same kind of journey in their life, rather than, knowing somebody's there to walk along the path with them that's gone through some similar things. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good. It sounds like my first therapy session, a long one. It all started with.
Yeah. So from here, kind of take me through the pain, something that caused you to say, okay, I got to find out why the world is the way the world is for me. Can you walk me through kind of, what that discovery was like?
So it was 10 years ago this year, 2000, well, we're 2040, but yeah, just over 10 years ago. I had a wonderful weekend with my wife, with my 2 kids. We were away seeing their family. Fantastic weekend, beautiful. We came back and I'm home alone. My kids have gone with their grandparents and my wife's out getting some food or something. So I'm home, and then I pop out. She's home, and I come back, and then she says to me, "Can we have a word?" And I said, "Oh, okay." And there was something in her voice. I just bought some flowers. I just bought some stuff as well. I was really happy, in a really good place. And I remember in our room, and she said, "I'm leaving you." And that, first of all, that was such a big shock, and I didn't quite understand that. And I said, what do you mean you're leaving us? She said, I'm leaving you and I'm taking the kids. And that just was like a real painful stab straight into the heart. And I had just instantly, my tears started to roll down. I fell to my knees and I just couldn't believe this was happening to me. It wasn't so much the relationship was ending. It was the fact that we had 2 kids. They were 5 years old, then 6 years old, and 2 years old. They were young, and I would spend all my time, with the kids as well. We both worked from home. I'd be around the children all the time, and just the thought of them being away, not living anymore, us being not a family unit, that just ripped. And I remember in that moment, I was thinking, do I turn right or left? And I don't know why I had this thought. Right or left meant, right, I start blaming, saying, no way, you can't take my kids, just get really angry. Or do I go left and say, Faisal, take 100% responsibility. This is all happening because of you. To me, that was my moment of, there's a quote that says, the universe has shaken you to awaken you. And that was that moment. The universe had shaken me to awaken me. And that's where I began my journey of being conscious, learning about life, learning about everything. And it was like day 0 for me. So that was a big change in my life. So I woke up from being unconscious to conscious.
And you painted a really great picture there about being at that crossroads where you go left and it's blaming and right is responsibility, or maybe I transverse that, but same analogy. What was your go-to throughout your life? Was it always to take responsibility in those big situations like that? Not that this wasn't the biggest, but you have those throughout your life, right?
Yeah. My typical, I guess, my approach was more of the nice guy, which was the avoider. I would avoid any kind of difficult conversations, difficult moments. I would brush it under the carpet. I would ignore it, hoping that it'll just naturally go away. It worked at some points in my life, but what happened was it bubbled up. So a lot of the times I'd try to fix the problem, try to get rid of my anxiety. One of the things I discovered about myself, and this was a shock. I always had an image of myself as being a cool, calm, collective guy. I'm like, yeah, I'm not anxious. Anxiety doesn't affect me. I was blindsided to the fact that I was an anxious person. And I see a lot in my clients I see say, I'm not anxious. Later on, they find out they're anxious. So my anxiety would then say, ignore everything or try to fix everything. What that did was it just bubbled up everything, and then things exploded or things got too much.
That sounds familiar. People always thought I was very even keeled, but on the inside there was a civil war of which action to take, and it was to take no action most of the time. So that sounds very familiar. So you and I are both fans of Tony Robbins, and one of the things Tony Robbins talks about quite a bit is the ability to make a change comes from when you can't take anymore, when you cross a threshold that delivers enough leverage that this is going to make a change. And it sounds like your wife having that conversation was finally enough leverage to make you cross that threshold. Is that an accurate interpretation?
Yeah, it was. It was absolutely, because I had gone through breakups before in my life, but nothing had really awakened me. So that was like rock bottom. And like Tony Robbins says as well, when we get to the point of I'm not enough to I've had enough or rock bottom, that's when we instigate a change. And that was a big change for me.
And the kids were obviously a big driving factor in that as well.
Yeah, it was. It was. I had I not had the kids, I don't think the impact would have been so strong, because it was my kids. I would just felt, I've just seen them, watch them walk. I'll miss out on so much stuff in their life. And afterwards, the journey was really painful. The awakening was something that I hated, and I also appreciated, but I hated at the moment because it was very dark in the aspect, because it confronted me with my dark side, my shadow parts. It confronted with me my flaws. It confronted me with the fact that, Faisal, things have happened because some of the things that you were doing and you weren't doing. It exposed a lot of my personality that I didn't like. There was aspects of me that were very insecure, very anxious. I needed a lot of certainty. I needed a lot of control in my life. I needed a lot of predictability in my life. And because of those things, I needed that. I would, panic or be, if I didn't have things my way, it would be a problem. And there was not much flexibility. So I had to come across these traits that I had. I didn't like them. My ex said, you're this kind of person, this kind of person. So she started throwing names around. You have this narcissistic stuff and you have this. And I'm like, what? I'm a narcissist. And that really hurt when she said, you have this, you could be that. And I don't want to be a narcissist. I was like, that's awful. That's ugly. I don't even know. I've heard of the term. And that's when I was like, I need some help. I need some help, because all I'm doing is just going down and down and down and darker and darker, the more I discover about myself. So that was a real tough time. And as I went on, there was a lot of shame and guilt that came on. I didn't know what even shame and guilt was. So I discovered there was a lot of shame, toxic shame. And after the divorce, I was really embarrassed, in pain and embarrassed. I was this guy who's failed. That was what's coming up. It's like, you're such a failure. I remember she moved to the other side of the UK. So it was 4 hours to get there, pick up the kids and bring them back. That's like 8 to 10 hours. And then I would have to do the same thing on a Sunday. So on a weekend, some weekends I was doing 20 hours of traveling. Luckily I was married to a good woman. That was, my saving grace is I was married to a good woman. I was frustrated and angry and annoyed at her for her breaking us up, but I was married to a good woman. And, she was fair as much as she could be. And I remember picking up the kids one day, and I just wanted to hide because I was paranoid that other parents would be looking at me as, oh, that's their dad who's a loser because he, screwed up the relationship. He couldn't keep a family together. What a loser. He's now becoming divorced. So there was a lot of embarrassment that came on. And I resorted to drinking as a way to soothe myself.
I want to take a step back if we can, because you had mentioned that you discovered there were some things about yourself that you weren't happy with any longer. Was that kind of a conscious list? You have some time by yourself right now, so there's probably more internal reflection than what you would normally have, right? Because you have kids you have to tend to, you have your wife needs that you want to tend to, and those kind of things. But now, aside from the weekends or the times where you have your children, you have some extra time, to do. I guess self-reflection is the best way to say it. But is that where those lists started to become, or was that a conscious thought of I'm going to list out everything I don't like about myself and make a change? I don't think it normally happens in the latter way, but maybe for you it did. So I wanted to ask.
Yeah, it was so I had my own business at the time and it was going downhill. As I realized my relationship is going downhill, my business was going downhill as well. So everything was like tumbling. And luckily had enough money to last me for some time. I was financially very good. I was like a good provider. Why is this happening to me? I provided everything to you. How dare you treat me like this? And then through reflection, I used to go for walks and listen to audiobooks after audiobooks, just trying to figure out what I did wrong. And it was not about what she did wrong. It's like, what did I do wrong? What's the mistakes? What I did wrong? What's my flaws? Because my internal was exposed so much. I was desperate to, I guess, shameful of my exposure to like what my traits were. And I just wanted to get rid of them. So I wanted let me fix these quickly. And I was this desperate guy just trying to fix all my flaws because as nice guys, we want to show a perfect front. So my perfectionism was kicking in. I just wanted to fix everything so everything will be okay again. That's it. Easy, smooth life. That's what I was hoping from the reflections.
Yeah, and as you were talking about, the shame and things that you felt about going through divorce, right? It's even a breakup, if it's not a divorce, but your friends know you're in a relationship, right? And then all the mistakes, all the things that we hide in order to pretend that we're perfect or to seek external validation and those kind of things. If you're going through a divorce and you don't have your kids around as much, there's no hiding that. There's no,
Mm.
pulling a blanket of BS, over top of that and trying to fool everybody anymore. So what would normally be obviously hurtful for other people to go through, I think it does kind of 10x, 100x when you're used to hiding everything from everybody in order to gain their approval or in order to appear more like you're a piece of perfection. And where now that's on full display. And so it's not just this thing, but it's the culmination of all the other things that we've hidden throughout our lives that get you into that point. And that's, great for some reasons, right? With every, what perceived negative thing, there are some positives that go along with it because that does lead into that crossing a threshold and no more and making the change. And so now you've taken kind of an inventory over time. You've listened to a lot of audiobooks while you're out doing your walks and things like that. Is that where you found No Mr. Nice Guy, or where did that book enter into your life?
So I, went on, yeah, got lots of YouTube videos and audiobooks and everything like that. And then eventually I started to go to seminars, talks and everything. And that's when I started to meet some other life coaches, therapists. And I thought, okay, I need some help because there's so much you can read, but you can read as much as you want about swimming. Unless you get into the water, it's a well, you're not going to actually learn about how to navigate in swimming. So I really had to go into the water, face the waves, and that's where I got myself a therapist. I had many therapists and coaches throughout my journey through 10 years as well. And I got a therapist, and he was like a men's coach and therapist as well. And he said to me, it's time for you to go from a boy to a man. And I said, what do you mean, boy to a man? I'm nearly 40 years old. And he says, yeah, your body might be nearly 40 years old. You're 37, well, I was 38, 39 at that time. And he says, you might be this age, but psychologically, you're still a boy. And, I got offended by that. I'm like, how dare you? I was like annoyed with that. But I knew that stick with it and listen. So I started to listen. And then he said, he kind of guided me that there are a lot of traits that you have, what nice guy traits that you have. And also at that time, I wasn't very good with women. So I started to, go on YouTube, trying to figure out how to be more attractive, started to learn all the pickup stuff, used to go out, try all the pickup stuff as well, trying to fill this void up as quickly and desperately as I could be. So I would have some self-worth, some self-love. Some people would appreciate me, see me, and want me and desire me. And I just tried everything. So I tried the pickup stuff, used to go out, 3-4 times a week just to practice, to get better at socially connecting with people. And in my therapy, in my coaching therapy, and he said that you have some traits. You're not a narcissist. I was like, wow. He said, but you have tendencies of it. And then I started to work on more men's work. And that's where I really discovered was I wasn't alone. There are so many other men who are struggling. And that was a relief. That was like the green light to do more of this work. Because a lot of times, even guys I work with, they think that they're the only one that have problems. So when I found out I wasn't the only person, there's other people that have these problems. It gave the green light. It allowed me to lean more into my recovery and see that, oh, I'm not the only one who had flaws. Oh, my ex-wife had flaws, and my parents had flaws. My friends have flaws. Men have flaws. Women have flaws. Kids have. We all have flaws. As much as we have a good side, we all have spectrum of some kind of disorder. And that was like, okay, I'm not alone here. I don't need to keep beating myself up. And that was a good lesson. And I need to stop being hard on myself because I've punished myself enough. And that was a great way to just start to saying, okay, now what else I can do? And that's when I started to discover the number Mr. Nice Guy, men's work. And it was more deeper into the men's work because I learned so much about psychology and human behavior as much as I could. One of my friends said, hey, come and speak for me. Come and speak in my event that she was holding up. And I was like, I'm not a speaker. I'm a tech guy, ex-tech guy. And she goes, no, come and speak. I did my first talk. It was awkward as anything, full of shame while I was talking about shame, ironically. And then she said, let's do this every 2 weeks. And I just kept doing this every 2 weeks. And I had a principle. If I say to myself, this scares me, I had an 80-20% rule. 80% of the time, if I say it scares me, I had to do it. So it scared me. I ended up doing it. And that's what got me onto a journey of coaching even more, supporting other people, men and women. I was coaching on relationships. And only a few years ago, a business coach said to me, go towards dating, go towards, men's work, dating stuff. And when I started going towards the men's work, that's when my growth really propelled, because I started to learn personal development, which was fantastic, about relationships, masculine and feminine. But a lot of the work, there was one big problem with this. The biggest problem with a lot of personal development was it's very feminine led. It wasn't pro male. It wasn't like, hey, we need to be proud of being a man and we need to build our masculinity. So a lot of the times it was, feminine led. And what happened was that nice guys, myself or two, raised by women, absent father, and became more and more feminine. So, my traits were being passive, being indecisive, not leading the relationship, not leading my life, not knowing what I wanted. That was a perfect recipe to be dysfunctional in the relationship.
That really resonates with me because a lot of self-help that I did, and I would have considered myself, as a lot of nice guys do, as a self-help junkie, right? You were constantly searching for the information that's going to fix what was going on. And there's a couple things, nice guys pretend to be perfect out in the world. We get alone and we just beat the hell out of ourselves until, we can't take it anymore, right? And then we go out the next day and we pretend to be perfect again. And then you come back and you beat yourself up. It's a shame spiral, really, is what that is. But going through all the self-help and different things, I always understood it intellectually, and it helped for a minute, but it would never last. There's still things like we talked about Tony Robbins, different things earlier. There's still things that resonate to me this day that I use, still over and over. So some things did last, but until, like you, I figured out, for you, it was, becoming more masculine. For me, it was just kind of putting a label on, okay, this is why I do things, right? Until I figured that out, it never really seemed to take hold. And it sounds like once you figured out it was the masculinity path that you took with the help of a business coach and things like that, that's where it was like, almost like that little missing piece that, we've been searching for that needle in a haystack for so long. It almost gets to a point where we're just about to give up, or it seems that the journey's never going to result to anything. And there it is.
Yeah. I had read some men's books, masculine and feminine books as well. It wasn't until I started to do the work. So a lot of us, including myself, we're very developed in our heads. but we embody far less than what we actually know. So I call this the embodiment gap. We have a gap between what we know and what we embody. So yes, I know, I should be doing X, I should be doing Y, I should be leading here. This is how I show up, but we end up not practicing that. And that is a gap all humans have, and all humans forever will be trying to close. And that's the real work that I'm doing, is trying to close that gap as much as I can through, practices that I have.
And that's part of, driving men through that transformational process of becoming not masculine, in a traditional sense, to where they're, going out and attacking the world and doing all that. And you're helping them become that person.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm helping them understand because, I've gone through that journey. So I'm just a few steps ahead. I haven't got all the answers. I've got some answers that. So one of the problems that a lot of guys experience is there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of resentment, there's a lot of bitterness, there's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of victim. They blame everybody else. Everybody else is the problem. Yes, not all of that is because the way it's your fault, but a lot of that is because there's the programming in your DNA. Nice guy is also, I believe that the nice guy is just not the nice guy because of his upbringing. I believe there's a nice guy gene, the people pleasing gene. We have that part of our adaptation of evolution psychology. And, I'm really fascinated with evolution psychology because what did we do 10,000 years ago? What did we do 20,000 years ago? Why do we do what we do? And evolution psychology puts a lot of light into these dark points as well. And so I believe, jury's out, but, they say 50% is your programming from all the, it's like a big software, right? When you have like a software or something, your computer or your phone or something like that, it has, when the new phone comes out, it's not everything starts from scratch. It's because there's been a generation of programming and programming. Same with our brain, same with our habits, same with our thinking. There's been generations of that. So nice guy, I believe, is part gene, makeup, blueprint, and then part our upbringing and our temperament, our thoughts, our perspective on that as well. So that's why I see two aspects to it.
Gotcha. And let's focus on the upbringing part of it for a second. You had mentioned that before, that kind of absent father, overly connected to the mom, I believe is what you said. Do you want to talk a little bit about that now that you understand kind of some of the upbringing factors that cause nice guy syndrome? Do you want to touch on how that affected your life?
Yeah, some of the things that I realized when I was going through my coaching journey as well, that one of the things that boys need to do, and it's something that is greatly missing in current society, and this plays a huge part on boys, is something called initiation, like rite of passage, a process where a boy goes from boy to man psychologically. He's tested over and over again so he can then learn some skills, and he's guided as well. My father was a nice guy. I had both loving parents, but they had their own flaws in their own parts. So my mom was a beautiful, loving woman. She was very absent. So she had her own psychological challenges. She had some depression. She had some mental kind of like challenges herself. And my dad was very much of a nice guy, passive, soft, gentle. He didn't have strong strength, masculine spine. And I grew up around my mother, my sister, my cousins, a lot of female upbringing. So what happens is that I learned the female version of life and template and emotions and the way perspective and thinking. Because I didn't have male role models or strong male role models, I was adapting the way they were doing life. So I romanticized love like they did and how they saw the world. And that became my template of life. And then I took that on to my future life. And one of the things I noticed was that it gave me, which was painful, was that it gave me a lot of emotional swings. It taught me to become more passive, to be pleasing, to people please, to, avoid conflict, always be kind. It didn't instill what I believe that I wish I had, is character, values, virtues, principles, strength, resilience, face danger. So I built a lot of there was a lot of safety mechanism in me. I see that in the women around me, they're like, oh, let's be safe, let's be safe. So it's very much scared, safe, anxious, safe, let's go safe. So that's their primal responses, was to go to safe. My primal responses were deep inside, but because I learned their template, then I pushed away my masculine template. And a lot of boys do that. That's why they have this initiation, is to push the guys, push boys to challenge, instill discipline, instill. So I didn't have that. And that's only when I started to do the men's work, men's group work. My coaches helped me to say, hey, we need to sharpen you here. We need to give you a spine, stand up for yourself, stand up to people in your life, stand up to your woman. I love the saying, if you stand up to your woman, she will know and respect you, because she knows that you'll stand up. If you can stand up to her, you'll be able to stand up for her as well. So there was a lot of lessons that was missing in my childhood as well.
It's so odd when you grow up the way you did, when you grow up the way I did. Our stories sound pretty similar. And I think this runs, when you talk to your coaching clients and things like that, you start to see patterns of those kind of things, right? But so much of this work is counterintuitive with that. You feel like if you put her on a pedestal, if you feel like you love her unconditionally, you'll do anything for her. That's going to lead you to this not only smooth problem free life, but a smooth problem free life that's full of love and affection, and you're getting your needs met. And the counterintuitive part of that is very often it's the opposite. It's holding your ground, but also remaining solid in your frame, letting that storm pass over you, as it's often called, and those kind of things is what really builds the connection and love to get what you want. It's not to be the wimp in the relationship, but that strong, I often refer to it as being a lighthouse, right? It's that strong beacon that the storms can often pass by, and it doesn't move. A lighthouse doesn't pretend to be a boat when it's convenient, or pretend to be a normal house because it's safer that way, right? It stands erect, and it stands to battle anything that comes its way, but also to provide a guiding light for anything that passes by. But it is so counterintuitive as you go through that. And you had mentioned the boy psychology, and constantly getting tested and those kind of things. And very often through those initiation processes, you're guided by somebody, right? With nice guy patterns in your life, in my life, and the men that we coach, a lot of times we don't get tested in that way. Or if we do, it's very infrequently. We don't have a guide to show us who that is. Most of the time it's an absent father, or maybe somebody who's left in our lives, or things like that. So I'm not so encouraged that it's getting better, right? As we maneuver through life, I think we're going to see more and more of this, which is why doing what you do as being a coach is so important. But you've touched on the fact, as you've gone through your journey, you've had men guiding you. You've had life and work coaches or business coaches helping you along the way. In fact, guiding you in that direction. But I guess my question is, do you think you could have gotten to where you are now if you didn't have that help along?
It would have taken about 500 years. So yeah, it would have taken a long time to get where I am. So no, I would have, in this life, no, because what we have is blind spots. We have a lot of blind spots, and human nature is that we function better once we have accountability. We get pushed, and until someone can help you see what you do. I remember having breakfast with my coach one day, with a few other people there after breakfast, and we're just walking back, and he said something. He says, "Do you know you did this?" I was like, "What?" He said, "You did this." I was like, I didn't know that. And he says, "Yeah, don't ever do that again." I was stunned. I was like, "Why?" He said, "Well, this behavior that you did signals X. And so we don't want to be doing that in an environment. This signals something about you. And this is something that we need to work on." And had I not had him there, he would have not been able to pick up this pattern. And a lot of the times when you're in the box, you can't see the label. And this is what, whole point of coaching and therapy or guidance. Coaching is one of the oldest professions in the world. All leaders go back hundreds and thousands of years ago had consultants, people to say, hey, we're more experienced, we'll guide you this way, we guide you. Guides have always existed. And without the guides, we would be lost. We would be frustrated. Imagine, how many people have access to YouTube in the Western world? So many people have access to it. Everybody knows how to lose weight. Everybody knows how to get strong. Everyone knows how to do better relationships, all of this stuff. We know it, but yet we don't do it because there are so many blind spots that we have. And it's not the knowledge that we need, it's the guidance to correct us in moments of where we make mistakes. So, for example, so when I go to yoga or Pilates or something like that, I'm standing in a certain way, I'm doing the warrior move. And she would come and I'm like, yeah, this is pretty cool. I feel good with this. And she'll come along and then she'll just move my arm. And she says, well, it needs to be here. And that's what coaches do, is just to help you find the missing parts that we don't know to get the move right.
Well, and it also goes right back to that initiation process, right?
Yeah.
The constant challenges that you go along the way. Go back to your coach example when you were leaving breakfast that day. That was him telling you, you had a challenge, you failed it. Here's how to do better with it next time. Let's work on it. And then he constantly challenged you along the way. And the other part of that that's missing, like we talked about, is somebody who knows what they're doing, right? So that might have been a shaman and tried days, or the king or whoever is the person, the medicine man or magician. Somebody who knew all the answers would guide you along those ways. And that's effectively what you're doing as a coach. What your coach did for you during that moment in time was having the ability to point out something, but doing it in an encouraging way, not to defeat you in that moment, but to challenge you to do better. So when you say sharpening your sword or things like that, that's what I took from it. Did I get that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's just like we have no problem when it comes to work. When you join a company or a business or something like that, you will go under someone's wings. There will be a mentor that will teach you. So when you're inexperienced, when you're new, you will learn somebody who does it better because they have the principles, the pattern, the experience behind them. We don't do this when it comes for relationships, our own psychology, our own well-being. I mean, yes, it's changing now, and more men are waking up, more and more women are waking up and saying, okay, we need some help and support here. No one teaches you about relationship. No one teaches about emotional intelligence and how to manage emotion. No one directs you, well, this is how you manage. So there is a huge gap between when we're born all the way until we get into your first relationship. I've seen my son, he's 16 years old and he's going through some challenges. And he kept it quiet to himself at first. And then at one point, he got to breaking point and then he shared. And I was like, oh gosh, you're going through such a hard point. And I said, you kept this to yourself. I was frustrated with that. I was angry. I was like, why did you keep that to yourself? And he goes, I'm embarrassed. I don't want you to know my problems that I have. And I get that. So he had his problems. And I said, look, with problems, there are solutions. So let's be solution focused. And then we went on this journey. I'm saying, okay, these are your emotional struggles. They're not going to go away overnight. And now what we need to do is the hard stuff. I never had this conversation with my family. My mom, my dad, they didn't know. And a lot of my friends didn't know. My relatives didn't know. The only people that knew was my mentors and coaches. Some, yes, you have to pay for that privilege. You have to pay for that right, that amazing kind of like wisdom and guidance. It's a shame that we do, but what we can do is become more conscious. And then, like, for example, I can help my kids and my children can then help their friends and their guidance. And that's what we need more in society, is just that support.
Yeah, and you said it perfectly before. You wouldn't have hit what you've done in 500 years, or it would have taken you 500 years. So you were able to fast forward through a lot of that by just having the proper guidance. Like you mentioned, there's a portion of the population that want to lose weight, and there's plenty of information out there if you want to go do it and how to lose weight. What are your percentages of hitting that goal if you hire somebody to keep you on the straight and narrow, that'll tell you where you're screwing up, that'll keep you on the right path, versus, hey, here's some information. I hope, I wish you well, good luck, right? We all need that person to challenge us, to hold us accountable. And the benefit of having a coach is that we do it in really a strictly encouraging way, right? Human beings are not unlike animals where
Sometimes.
well, sometimes you need to, point out things, but ultimately you're doing it for a shared goal, right?
Yeah.
As a coach, you want them to hit the goal, right? And as, the participant, you want to hit that goal. So if you do things that are out of line, we call that out. That's what you're paying us to do, right? But it's also encouraging you and the belief in you that you can do better, and the knowledge of how to get you there.
Yeah. I remember my coach, he said to me, I believe in more in you than you believe in yourself. And he says, until you keep working at this until you start believing in yourself, because we need somebody. There's a deep depth in us that we need somebody else to believe in us first until we can get our own strength back, or build our strength. And then until we don't establish a strong foundation. That's what the hard work is for. That's why we need that hard work, because that hard work builds the foundation. Today's society is way too soft. And any kind of difficulty things that happens, they just like quickly move away from that. Oh, it's too much, it's too painful. It's like let's be safe, let's be safe, let's be comfortable, let's be comfortable. And that was my upbringing. That was my the attitude I had. I remember my family. So I come from a culture of from Pakistan, and in that culture, I was talking to a client actually. He's from similar as well. And in our culture, it was like, oh no, don't do hard work, don't push yourself. You don't want to push your body like that. Maybe your body's not made for it. And when I met my wife, and my wife's from here in the UK in English, and she loves the outdoors. She's really into fitness and pushing herself. And I was thinking, shit, I'm a man and I'm not even pushing myself. What's wrong with me? There was an aspect of me, because my inner warrior, my inner strength as a masculine man hadn't been woken up. It was dormant. And a lot of men nowadays are dormant. They have the masculinity dormant. And when a man has dormant masculinity, he has chaos, disorder, panic, anxiety, confusion, frustration, anger, resentment, all kind of emotions swimming around and pushing him around. And that's what happened. Everything pushed me around until I started to do the men's work. Getting help, getting the support helped me to start establishing deep roots. It takes time. My ego wants it now. The boy in me is impatient. One of the things I see in guys is like patience, patience, patience. I heard it all the time when I was young, patience is a virtue. I'm like, fuck that. I haven't got time for that. So I wanted instant stuff all the time. So the men's work was a great foundation to start building deep roots. It's the deep roots that protect you. As I call it, masculine fractures is what I call like the problems that we have. So masculine fractures, the 5 masculine fractures that we have, it destroys us. If we don't work on it, it'll destroy us. So masculine fractures destroy, masculine character heals, and masculine habits strengthen us. It protects us. It seals in what we do.
I want to get into the fractures here in just a second, but I read this the other day, and I'm sure I'm not going to quote it correctly, but it was success takes a long time and happens fast, right? It's like hockey stick growth. You do the same things that are going to get you there over time. You build on each of those. So it takes a while to get there, but once you're there, you start to see where the doors open. You start to see the things that you've been working so hard for, where before you wouldn't have noticed them because you didn't put yourself in a position to notice those things. And so working with a coach just helps you get there a little bit faster. But we talked about, a little bit about the fractures, the problems. Do you want to break down the 5 fractures for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've done so much personal development and growth, and I'm still doing it. I'm still a student of life, and always be a student of life, and also teaching. And I'm learning to teach as well, more and coach, and ups and downs that happens. What I discovered was there's so much out there for humans. There's so much personal development out there, and now especially in the way you can get ebooks so quickly and YouTube videos, and there's so much information. What I came up with is a framework, and it was a framework of putting a lot of the self-development into 5 simple boxes. I love boxes. So I put them into 5 simple boxes. And what that does is it helps you and narrows you to know, okay, I need to work on this. I need to work on this. I need to work on this. I need to work on this without overwhelming yourself. When you give a lot of personal development to everybody, it's like, where do I start? Where do I begin? And it's like, they're just sent out in this massive place and they get confused. And when they become confused, they become passive. They procrastinate because there's no clear path. What I did was created a 5 fracture, so 5 masculine fractures. So the first fracture is a nerve fracture. The nerve fracture is that you have an anxious nervous system. And the fear voice of this is that I need to be in control. I need control. And then you have the second fracture, which is called the mindset fracture, or the mental fracture, the mind fracture. And the mind fracture has a belief or a fear that I'm not enough. And I call that the masculine fracture. It's related to the masculine side, a father wound. The third fracture is the emotional fracture. Emotional fracture is I believe I'm unlovable. So I'm not lovable. So the first one is I'm not in control. I'm not enough. I'm not lovable. And this is what I call the feminine fracture in us. And that's when you believe, like, will I be loved? She doesn't love me. We have all abandonment issues coming out there. The fourth fracture is the sexual fracture. And that fracture is I'm not desirable. And that's when we have, am I attractive enough? Does she want me? Does she sexually want me, desire me? She might want me as a provider, but does she see me as a lover? Does she yearn for me? Does she fantasize on me? Does she brag about, oh my God, what an amazing guy, so attractive. So I'm talking about character attraction here. And the fifth fracture is a spiritual fracture. I am not fulfilled. And this is the part where I went through some time after my breakup feeling empty inside, lost inside, aimless inside. I kept on asking the question, why, why, why? Why do we want this and why? And it sent me down a really dark place. And that place was, why do I need to be in this life anymore? And I was really contemplating taking my own life. And that was a real dark moment for me. And these fractures I created in order to help me better understand where I need to work on, and then also help other men and women, help us all to understand is like, what areas do I need to work on without getting confused, without getting overwhelmed. So it's a very simple method. And I even showed it to Dr. Robert Glover, the author of No More Mr. Nice Guy, and he loved it. I was like, fantastic, because it's so simple. One of the painters, I can't remember, he said, simplification, simple stuff is, sophistication. And so I showed it to Dr. Glover, and he said something cool. He said, you're not teaching anything new. What you've done is just packaged it really well. And it was true. I'm not teaching anything new. There's so much information out there. I'm not teaching anything new. I'm just teaching the simple things that we need to get done. A lot of nice guys, we need complex things. It has to be really complex, really detailed. Yet we can't even do the simple things like make our bed, go to sleep on time, get some exercise. We can't even do the simple stuff. Yet we're looking for real complexities. I call that the, mindset fracture. He's the avoider. He wants more and more and more so he can avoid and delay that it's actually not my fault. There's more information that needs to be had. So that's the 5 fractures. I'm really excited about it. I'm really working on this theory right now. And my plan is to bring this out on a global scale, bring this out to be my main talk, signature talk, and eventually get a book published on this as well. So I'm excited for this.
And I knew I was going to forget one of your credits, and it's the one that you and I, how we met was through the Silverback Tribe. You are the founding coach and leader of that tribe call. So you shared this with me a little bit ago, a couple months ago, probably at least. And, my reaction was the same. It's just so simplified or so simple to follow each one, as you go through. And, there is a thing about that, right? It can't be this simple. We got to make it complex, because if it was this simple, I'd be doing it already. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's so interesting how our mind does create like, no, this can't speak to me, because if it was this simple, I'd already be doing it. But to your point, very early on, when we were talking about self-development, those things you go to, if you don't embody what you're learning, you're just kind of doing it on this, not even an intellectual level at that point. You're just reading to figure something out, maybe to have an anecdote while you're at a party or something that you can talk about or seem interesting or something like that. But you're not really doing the work to take it in, that embodiment. And you came up with the embodiment gap, which I love. If you have that gap, then you're not doing it. Most people say, if it's not this simple, or it can't be this simple, I got to have this whole 37-point bulleted list, and each one of those bullets has 15 points underneath it. And that's the only way life can work, because it's just that complicated. But when you make those small changes and you start to really incorporate them into your world, then that's where all of that happens. And it doesn't have to be complicated, which is, fantastic that you put that together. And then to get a blessing from, one of your mentors, right?
Yeah, he loved it. And I always, as you evolve more and you see, and you go through the mess at first. I went through lots of complication and mess. And I realized that a good life requires, to keep it simple, stud. Or you used to call it stupid, but I call it stud. So keep it simple. And this is a principle I'm bringing more into my life. Keep things really simple, because It's simplicity stuff that you can execute, and it's perfect for avoiders. It's perfect for procrastinators. It's perfect for people with unresolved issues and unresolved fractures, because they want to hide behind the complexity. Oh, look, it's simple, it won't work, but I need it much more complex. Oh, I need it much more complex. I need more information, more information, right? So that's just, again, an addiction. I need more. And once I have more and more and more, it's like a bucket with a hole in it. And eventually I'll be fixed. Reading 10,000 hours of books and audio and video on how to learn swimming without actually getting into the pool, you're not going to ever learn it. But yet one person might even just learn a little bit about swimming, but has done 10,000 hours of actual swimming. There's no comparison. 10,000 of logic swimming or embodiment swimming, you get the point.
Yeah.
I don't want to go too
And
deep with this.
yeah, you had also mentioned something, and I don't want to skip over it, but you were in a really dark place, and you had contemplated, maybe ending things at that point, right? And maybe that was the only way out that you were thinking of. And
Mm.
based on what your specialty is, masculine charisma, but also working with people who have gone through similar scenarios as you, what would be some advice that you'd give to somebody if that's kind of the abyss that they're looking in right now? Is this way seems like the only option, and I don't really have anything on the other side of that to balance that scale out. What did you tell yourself in that moment to get you away from that thought?
It's a good question. And there was some instinctual response. There was some deep intuition or something saying this is not the path to go. Don't do this. And you've got 2 kids and family who love you and want that. And because I saw my kids in pain, I saw myself in pain, I was like, if I remove myself, then it'll be easy. I just problem fixed. And that's how I was looking at it. It was more about avoiding the pain and the problem, and finding a shortcut to fix the problem. So I just knew that I just couldn't do it. But what I did was I started to work on myself and constantly work on myself, a bit too obsessively, but I kept working. And one of the things I started to do was, over time, I started to remove the negative habits I had. I would drop my kids to the back to their mums, and I have a 5-hour journey back, and that's a lot of time on your own. And sometimes I hated the time on my own. I needed some distraction, so I would drink and come back home and drink some more and drink myself to sleep. And in those moments where I was really struggling, I said, what's the point? What I didn't realize was that my small habits, my resilient work, would one day become a strong foundation. As I say, the day you plant the seed isn't the day you can see the plant. And that's what happened. Was I planted the seeds in, and it just took time and time and time. And I kept saying to myself, this too shall pass. This too shall pass. This too shall pass. I just kept repeating that. And I kept I digged in, deep in myself. I had really good friends. I had good friends, and I had an amazing sister, who just was there for me. She was like a rock, and she gave me a lot of love and support. And I believe is you need to have good people around you. A lot of guys who struggle don't have good guidance around them, and also tough love. You need some tough love, and that's what my support, my coaches, my therapist, my sister, my friends, and everything, they gave me some tough love. They needed to say, hey, you need to pull yourself out. I remember I was dating this girl, and we were going for a walk, and I had this kind of like victim energy to myself. I was like, oh, poor me. Look, I've gone through divorce. I nearly lost the house, and yada, yada, yada. And it's going to cost me so much, yada, yada. And she just looked at me, and she went, oh, poor Faisal. And she kind of like made like a violin, kind of like, oh, poor Faisal. Oh. And I just looked at her and like, what? How dare you mock my emotions? How dare you mock my stuff? And she said, oh, poor you. And that shocked me. I was annoyed with her. I was like, how dare you? What she was doing was actually giving me a gift. There is time to feel the grief, feel the pain. I understand that. But now it's time for you to get out of that. Now it's time for you to put a limit to this. Now it's like enough is enough. Are you going to stay in wallow and victim mindset, or are you going to actually do something about it? And getting out of, problem focus, everything's wrong with me. I have a naturally negative mindset. So staying in the negative, she was like, it was time you came out of this and started to work on this, work on looking forward. And that was the journey. It's like, now it's time to look forward, get out of this pity party. And pity party was so unattractive. And eventually she was like, this is not attractive. I don't want this anymore. So that was another wake up call. Was one is no one gives a fuck about your emotions. People don't. People only care about themselves most of the time, right? They care about you, but people are really concerned about their problems, their traumas, their fractures. And the only person that's going to save you, as I said, pen doesn't write for itself. Pen doesn't write for itself. So, as I say, I've heard a saying that God helps those who help themselves. And that's what we need to do. We need to start helping ourselves. I think it's Chris Tucker who was, I love his saying. He said when his car broke down, it's wet, it's cold, he's in the rain, and he's trying to wave people to help him. And no one stopped. There's cars just passing by. And he got really angry and frustrated because, look, I'm stuck in this dark and it's rain, it's cold, and no one's helping me. So he started to push the car himself. As he started to push the car, he noticed that a car quickly pulled up and a guy jumped out and started to help him. And then another guy pulled up and started to help him. And he says the lesson was, if you're waving for everybody to help you, no one's going to stop. But if people see you helping yourself and see that you're invested in this, they'll come and help you. What a beautiful lesson.
Yeah. Oh, that's really great. As you were starting to go down that, one of my favorite quotes from Eckhart Tolle is, people don't do things to hurt you. They do things for themselves, or they don't do things to you. They do things for themselves. And the reason why I thought about that when we were talking about one of the people that you were dating giving you that gift of, hey, Faisal, that's a pity party of one, right? I don't want to be involved in that, and I don't want to be in a relationship like this. What a gift that is, because people don't do things for you. They do things, or to you. They do things for themselves, but she stepped out of that and she did something for you. It might have hurt in the moment, right? But sometimes that shock is what separates it from being just noise into something you really take in, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Sometimes we look at those things, even when you reflect on them later, and like, can't believe she said that to me. But then, wow, what a gift that really was.
Yeah. And lessons, and this is a misconception everyone has. A lesson has to come all wrapped up, beautiful, and presented to you. No, some lessons come in really unexpected ways, because that's the only way we're going to take note of them. If they all came up soft and gentle and oh, you should be doing this, well, like, I've heard it a million times, it has no value. So sometimes your lessons are going to come in unexpected, counterintuitive ways, and you would hate them at that point. I've had many lessons I hated, but only later on did I see that, oh, that lesson was teaching me something. Only when you have this awareness, consciousness, then you realize that's a gift. You might not see it in the moment. I didn't see my divorce or breakup in the moment as a gift, but it was an incredible gift because it allowed me to become a stronger, more masculine man, not a macho man, but more, deep rooted in my own self. Start building that character. I'm not there yet. I still have all the flaws. I still have them, but then I'm at a tipping point where I'm, I enjoy myself. I respect myself. I believe that success is when you become your own best friend. And that was a gift that he gave me. He also gave me a gift that I can be a guide to my kids, to my nephew, to my nieces, to my family. That's a gift. And another gift is, I created this 5-fracture framework, which many, I don't care how many people, as long as it helps one person just change their life, that's more than enough. It's not about masses. Yes, I wanted to impact as many as it can, but I rather it changed your life, so you embodied it rather than just got another information.
When you were in that part along your journey and you knew you needed some help and you found a coach to go with, was it an instant, I know I need this, I'm going to do it? Did you need to kind of think about it? How did that decision to finally find the coach and work with him come up?
Yeah, there was a lot of hesitations. There was a lot of like, should I not? There was a lot of scared. I was, really scared to take a leap of faith. And a lot of men and women don't have, regardless of the money, even if it's like £10 or $10 or something. You want to invest in yourself, or thousands. It doesn't matter. It's just that we have this fear that comes in. Will it work? What happens if it doesn't? Or what happens if I get it wrong? What happens if I can't do it? There's so many things that come up. And I remember in 2019, I spent nearly 19,000, nearly 20 on coaching and training, because I see it as investment. I knew that it paid off dividends before. I knew that, when I got rid of some of my blind spots, I need to carry on doing this. And I still continue doing this. I still have coaches. I still have therapists. The good thing is you get to a point where, not fully, but you can coach yourself a lot. Yeah, you can see and you can rationalize, and you have this capacity, psychological strength and capacity to have better introspection, sharpened introspection. It doesn't mean that you still can't see your blind spots, because they're the blind spots. There's still areas that I still need guidance and support with. Only recently, I signed up with a new clinical psychologist. I was really struggling with my kids. I'm having some real problems here. I don't know who to talk to. So I signed up with a clinical psychologist. I had a call with him and saying, this is what I'm struggling with my children. And he goes, yes, you're a coach yourself, but also you're a father. You're a man. You're a lover. You forget you have all these hats on, and stop trying to do it all. I said, I'm really struggling in this. And what he gave me was, one, took that pressure off that I had to do all by myself. I knew there was, somebody on my side with this problem. And then helped me to take all that emotional chaos and to be able to come with a rational kind of strategy moving forward. And implementing that, gave me the results I wanted, because I didn't want to have the same results. I wanted a new result in my parenting as a dad. There's some shortcomings. I need to really fix on that, really need to work on that. And wow, Jay, it's like the things I implemented not only helps me with my kids, but it helps me with other aspects of my life. I was like, wow, these are secrets. Like, we talked more deeper about boundaries. We talked about my need for certainty, my need for my kids' need for certainty. Because are you bringing this in? Are you bringing in this? And he found some flaws. He found some weaknesses in my area, because I live with my older son. There's nobody else to there observe me. So he was able to observe the things I was doing as a parent, because it was just about parenting. And that was so, like, I would have given like 10x more just to be able to say I can have a better relationship with myself and my son and my sons. And to me, that's priceless. Family is priceless.
There's a couple of good lessons there. One is sometimes you need a general practitioner to diagnose the problem. Then, if you're having knee pain, you need to go to a knee specialist in order to work on that. And that's, along the way, some of the journey that you go through. If you jump right into knee pain, but it's really your shin that hurts, right? Going to the knee specialist isn't going to hurt you. So you need to find somebody to diagnose, what the actual problem is or what the actual stem of it is, and then go into that specialty. But also that it's not over, and it's not over in two different ways. It's not over, you're struggling with relationship with your kids and doing different things. So it's your responsibility to go out and figure out how you can show up in a different way to do that. But it's also not over for, well, I just need to give up because I've tried all these things and it's not working, right? So there's that whole, need to come back and say that, things aren't over. Do you remember the year that you figured out, I'm a nice guy, and now I need to fix the masculinity part and all of that? Do you remember what year that was?
Oh, when I read the book, I thought, gosh, this guy's been following me around. Glover did an incredible job with this book. I recommend this book to every single guy I speak to. I'm like, get this book, get this book, get this book, then let's have a conversation. So I read the book, but I didn't really, at that time, maybe 2015 or something, I didn't really embrace it. It's only, I think, around about 2018, 2019, I embraced it. Like, really, like, okay, cool. I have these nice guy traits. I want to work on my masculinity. I need to get this handled. Yes, I got to a competent stage with women. I got to a competent stage of attracting women. I became a very good seducer. I wanted to, I was a tech guy. I wanted to know, could I live like a playboy? That was one of my goals. Is like, I had an egotistical goal of, because I didn't have that before. I saw all my, guys in my school who were so good with women, just left, right, and they could just get women. I was like, I never had that. So I wanted that. I wanted to get that out of my system. And I became very competent at getting the women. But the point that I really struggled at that point was it felt empty. Yeah, I just got
Yes.
with a really hot girl. Yes, we had some amazing sex and intimacy and stuff like that and great conversations. But when I put my head on the pillow and I closed my eyes, that's where there was an emptiness. And that emptiness I knew wasn't going to be filled with the things I was doing. So I had to do something different. And that's when I started to really embrace men's work. And the more I did the men's work, the more I started to notice my bucket with holes in it starting to fill up. You know, all the patches started to come in. The wonderful gift was I was starting to feel even more powerful and strong about myself, more confident in my own skin. My mood swings went, from like having high mood swings went to being more stable. It doesn't mean I don't have my mood swings. It does. It doesn't mean I don't have my emotional challenges. I do. The difference is that I don't sit in them for a long time. Much more resilient. Yes, I have my panics and sometimes I over exaggerate. I still have those things, but the thing is, they are very short lived than like they used to be. And what a wonderful gift I gave myself, or the world gave me, is to be able to be much more stronger, confident. So now, with or without a woman, I'm still good, because I have purpose. I find meaning. I focus on habits, and all of these things prop me up, keep me stable. My frame, the structure of a building is so important in order to keep it propped up. And that's what I've been working on, is building that masculine frame by healing the fractures, by working on the fractures.
And one of the things Dr. Glover talks about all the time, we'll do Q&As and things like that, and somebody will say, I'm a recovered nice guy, or I'm a recovered X. And I'll say, well, good for you. I'm 40 years in or 30 years in, and I still haven't recovered, right? Because, and a lot of guys, that you coach, I'm sure come to you like this, but they want the answer and they want the fix. And, we guide them along that journey, that trail. But you have, and most times, guys that I work with are right around the age of 40. It seems to be when we come into this, period of life where we need to make a change. But you got to realize you have 40 years of patterns that you've been living, and as we're working on those things, there's going to be times where you resort back to some of that old behavior if you're not working on it and constantly working on that. I'm sure you come into that as well with your coaching and things like what encouragement do you offer men that still resort back to some of their old behaviors as they're becoming?
Yeah, when guys do come to me, and guys have, usually the guys I deal with are having problems with attracting women. Usually the single nice guys or men, they have their fractures, and they want to get better with women. They want to get better, more confident, charismatic, charming around women. And they also want to be a good man inside. They want to build more of themselves. When we have a call, I do tell them, I said, look, I'm going to tell you directly. If you're looking for a quick win solution, I'm not your man. Yeah, there's plenty of coaches out there. Go and work with them, right? Once you realize you still got a massive embodiment gap, then you come to me. But remember, this is a slow process, because the way I work is inside out rather than outside in. Because you can keep doing the outside in work and it will not help you long term. It might feel like good for a little bit. Oh, there's a bit of relief, like you mentioned. But my work is from the inside out, because that's what led me and helped me to change and transform, and to be at a tipping point where I'm like, yeah, life's good. Still has his messes, still has his struggle. But yeah, I have more power, more strength, more resilience most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. So I always say to the guys, this is going to hurt. It's going to be slow. The boy in you is going to be impatient. The man in you that's ready to emerge, to come out, understands that it requires patience. And if this is what you're willing to do, willing to sacrifice, then yeah, let's go on a journey. And what I'm realizing more as I'm evolving, as I value time, as I value death, as I'm ascending in my healing my spiritual fracture, I'm realizing that I'm being far more selective with my one-to-one clients. Far more. I've actually turned down in the past few months many guys, and I'm saying, because I realize, one, they're not ready. And the second point is that I'm going to be spending time with them. So yes, the money is good, but it's not the money that's driving me. It's like I'm going to be spending time with them. Do I want to spend that time? Is that how I want to remember my life and spend that time? And
Mhm.
this is the same principle when it comes to dating and relationships. Do I want, is the trade worth it? And even in relationships, even with your coaching clients, I'm becoming more selective because I didn't have these standards. So I'm raising my standards. As I raise my standards, I'm becoming more selective. And I'm enjoying life even more. Yes, I could be making a lot more money, but I've coached guys who've had millions and even coached a guy who had 1.4 billion. It's like I want to make sure that the inside work is done. Because when you put your head on your pillow again, then you go, might not be a perfect day, but it's a good day.
Well, I think you just came full circle in your journey a little bit there, right? You went from the feminine frame of always seeking love, seeking the hot woman that's going to cure everything, and doing that to now with the pursuing of the right clients, with the pursuing of that, you're giving the love, you're providing the love. And I think
Mm.
that's a full circle moment. So if you haven't thought about that yet, maybe I gave you something there, but
Yeah. I was like, I like this insight. See, you're always a student, aren't we? We're always learning
there you go.
something.
Well, sometimes it's hard to see it in ourselves, right? We need somebody else to point it out. And that's another great version of what a coach does, especially for nice guys, because we constantly focus on what we're doing wrong. We very
Yeah.
rarely go to what we're doing right. And there's a lot of
Correct.
that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Problem, problem, problem. Negative, negative.
Well, Faisal, thank you for walking us through this. It was a pleasure to learn more about the story. You can be found at masculine.co, the Silverback Tribe call, Tuesday morning in my time. It's Tuesday, I guess, mid afternoon, early evening your time in the UK.
Yeah. Yeah. Find me in the Silverbacks in the Integration Nation because, we're under the wing of Dr. Glover, who's done an incredible work. And the amount of love that man has for people and the amount of stuff he's done and for me as well, I'm ever so grateful. And he's there and he says, look, I want to support you with your book as well, with the 5 fracture principles. I'm like, wow, incredible amount of generosity. And you can see the amount of work he's done as well, the amount of love he has for people and humanity. I want to give it back, pay it forward as well.
Those exact words, hold true for me as well. As soon as I read the book, it was exactly your story. I felt like he's been following me around. He's writing a book of my life and things that I do on a weekly basis. And like you, I jumped in. We bonded over this when we first started with our Silverback Tribe, but just the immersion that we tried to go through once we figured out, that is not just taking in all the information, but how can I really embody this, right? And I don't know if you went into it initially being a coach. I wasn't. I was in a corporate role doing fine and living a life. And the longer I kept into that immersion, the more the light got to shine of, hey, this is something I feel like I can be a help for. And I feel like you were in the same boat.
Yeah, yeah. I was a coach when I was going through even more with the nice guy, and even now I've stopped reading the book. No More Mr. Nice Guy. I'm actually studying the book. There's a huge difference between just reading and then just taking in. There are so many things I completely overlooked, and it's a genius book. It's really well written. There was aspects of, like, for example, mother issues, and a lot of we all have mother issues as men, mum issues, dad issues. And in the book, I thought, oh, there's only a paragraph about it. But when I've been studying the book, I'm like, wow, there's so many references to it. And again, becoming more patient allows us to study. And when we are nerve fractured, we just want to rush through the books. So
Yeah,
incredible
you're
book.
really searching for an answer, right? Especially when you start to hear your story, and it's like, okay, but when does he tell me how to fix me? He's telling you
Yeah, it's like,
all along the way of these are the little things, and they all affect you along the way, right? It's kind of going back to that success is slow, but it's fast. At the end, the build of it is slow. So as he's writing the book and you're reading through the book, it's the little things throughout. But if you take it,
yeah.
embody it, study it, live it like you have, that's when the success comes at the end.
Yeah,
So,
as a saying, slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
all right. Faisal, thank you so much. We'll look forward to seeing you on
Thank
the
you, Jay.
Silverback, the Tribe calls, the Brotherhood calls, and also the 5 fractures coming soon, or at Masculine, where you can sign up to learn more information. Thanks, Faisal.
Jay, appreciate it. Thank you, my man.